Brighton also.
Nikki. Okay.
Oh, she just put it on, I think.
Okay, great. So for those of you who have just joined, I'm Ishay Govender. I'm here on behalf of SAPOC at the table. And today our topic is on veganism and plant-based lifestyles. We're looking at this, some of the myths, the misconceptions. We're looking at it from a POC and Black angle. And you may wonder, well, what's that got to do with anything? What does race have to do with anything? So for those of us who work closely in food and with regard and food-related issues, understand that actually has a lot to do with everything. It has a lot to do with capitalist systems in which we exist. It has a lot to do with white supremacy, which manifests in many ways and in many places and still affects the lives of those that are marginalized. And those that are marginalized are not always minorities. So to kick us off today, I would like to invite our panelists to introduce themselves, to please tell you where they're based and how they are related to our topic on veganism and plant-based lifestyles. Kola, would you like to start, please?
Hi, my name is Kola, Chef Kola. I am the founder and owner of African Vegan on a Budget, which is a lifestyle brand based in South Africa and Zimbabwe. Yeah.
Thank you and welcome. Shaun?
Thank you.
Hi. So I'm Shaun, and I own and organize the vegan goods market. I'm based in Cape Town, and I also provide my social media accessibility and affordability to veganism and other types of sustainable lifestyles.
Okay, thank you. Shaun, I'm going to ask you just to turn up the volume on your side, if that's okay, because I've lost you in the visuals from my side.
Can you,
if that's okay.
hear me now?
Yes, I can. Would you like to repeat the last part, please?
Okay, perfect. So what I was saying is that I use my social media to promote sustainability and as well as accessibility and affordability to various sustainable parts of life that you can, tap into, like veganism, going plastic free, and just living a slower life.
Okay, thank you. And Bathandwa?
Hi everyone, I'm Bathandwa, also known as the Earthy Cook. I'm a food blogger, food photographer. I also do food editing for Arise magazine. I also host a few events here in Newcastle and in Ladysmith. I also work with Women Wellness, which is like an institute for women who want to get back into health. So we feature yoga, plant-based eating, as well as holistic medicine, and we just try and motivate women to take care of themselves. And yeah.
Okay, thank you and welcome. Parusha.
Hi everyone, my name is Parusha and I promote plant-based eating through sharing recipes on currently my blog, which is parusha.com, and I like to have conversations around plant-based eating and also more ethical eating, like even looking beyond veganism and all the different areas involved in making the right choices. And so basically just advocate for a plant-based and more ethical view on approaching food. And I do that mainly by just sharing fun and easy recipes using easy to find affordable ingredients. That's kind of my goal.
Okay, so great. Thank you. Well, thanks to everyone who's joined us today. And we're going to kick off. So we're very curious to know about your journey to veganism or plant-based lifestyles. And I would like everyone just to contribute and give a little bit of an idea about how you've come to this point that you are at right now. Kola, would you like to start?
I started my journey in veganism in Cape Town, where I was never a vegan and knew nothing about veganism. And I applied for a position at a restaurant named Plant. And I got trained by a lovely lady called Chef Nicola, who taught me everything I know about veganism. And she just didn't teach me how to cook veganism. She also taught me about the environment and the reason why veganism is a lifestyle, not just a diet. So my journeys from veganism started about I think 2015. And because of working from plants, I got a business idea and started African Vegan on the Budget. And yeah, to keep it short.
Great. Thank you. Shaun?
So I went vegan in my final year of university. I was introduced to veganism through my friends in university, and they kind of encouraged me to go vegan, but also to fill up my mind with various resources by watching documentaries. And I watched a documentary called What the Health, which completely blew my mind, and that really just opened my eyes to what was happening in the food industry as well as the pharmaceutical industry. That encouraged me to continue to do my research and also to start my journey. And as I went through more resources and did more research, I watched a documentary called Earthlings, which introduced me to the ethical side of veganism, just showing the brutality of animal abuse in various aspects of life, whether it be for food consumption, animals being used in entertainment, in the beauty and cosmetic industry. And since then, I've been eating for the animals, and yeah, it's been almost 3 years now since I've been vegan.
Okay, thank you. Bathandwa?
I was first a vegetarian in high school, and I was like one of those super woke, super angry people. I was still young. I was so upset at everything. So I remember a friend sent me this album by Dead Prez, and one song in the album was just talking about eating healthy and just being conscious and stuff like that. And then the lyrics was like, I don't eat no meat, no dairy, no sweets. And I was like, how the hell, how do you even survive? What do you eat? What do you do? And that just like led into a whole lot of snowball actually of information that I got on the internet. And I just started questioning a lot about like animal treatment, about the environment and what it does actually for you as a human being. And I never even knew what veganism was, but slowly over the years, the more I started reading, the more I became conscious of myself too. I actually felt like if I can be vegetarian, then I could actually be vegan. And that's just how it happened. But I'm not super woke and super angry anymore. I'm more chilled and I'm more understanding that everybody wants to do whatever it is that works for them. So yeah.
Hey, thank you. So Parusha, and I call you Parusha because I have a very good childhood friend who has the same name as yours but pronounced that way. So
that's
Parusha.
the right way. No, it is the right way. Parusha is the way it's supposed to be pronounced. I think just because I went to schools where people couldn't pronounce it, and also it's easier to say. I mean,
the way you pronounce it is the right
Parusha
way.
is actually the way that it's supposed to be, because in the Hindu philosophy of like when you're born, there's a sound of the universe, then your name has to follow that. So the sound of the universe was Pa. It's supposed to be Parusha. But
so
you're doing it right. You stick to it. And then I will pronounce my own name correctly. But
so
yeah.
we have spoken about your I mean, you like to advocate for what you call plant-based.
But
right?
I can also give you
so,
my
yes, let us know.
So I began the journey about 8 years ago, and I became vegan in Berlin. And I had been exposed to a few people who were vegan and then became curious about it. And at the time I was a meat eater. I grew up in South Africa. I'd lived in South Africa till most of my life. I lived in the UK. Then I got into just being around more people that made me think about it. And I always kind of thought of myself as a creative thinker. And so because I'm always questioning everything, I was, going to try it out for a month after I watched a whole lot of videos, Earthlings, What the Health, a bunch of other things, did a lot of reading. And then it made sense from the point of view that, there is a lot of animal suffering in the mass production of meat, and, it's really cruel. And also, so for the animals, for the planet, for the health of people, you can change the whole course of, all these different things, basically. So I tried it for a month and then just kept going. Then I became like doing a vegan pop-up dinner. I did it once a month at first, then twice a month, then like almost every week. Then I moved career almost to become this vegan chef. And then about 4 years ago, came back to South Africa. And it was like a kind of, I had this framework where I was like, animal cruelty bad, veganism good. And then actually hadn't thought so much about, I mean, I had been what you call intersectional in my approach, like, thinking about everyone and how it, affects the lives of people, how we can, end the inequality and the suffering, but not just for the animals, but thinking about all the people involved. And I also, all my family are not vegan. So I slowly became a bit more like flexible to when I eat at my grandparents or I eat out, I'll be a vegetarian. And then now I also have like thought a little bit more about it, like, okay, you can't, if you just, shopping in big supermarkets, there's still like human suffering involved in the production of things. And I look at my clothes, I look at what I put on my skin, hair care products, shoes. And, I started to look at, okay, what can I do? Because if I try and do everything, it's like overwhelming. So right now I call myself plant-based, so I can have a bit of flexibility. So if there's a farm, friends who have chickens, I might have an egg. Someone has honey from a farm, I'll have that. And then, so yeah, basically I would say I'm more plant-based now. I eat mostly vegan, but it's just less complicated if I say plant-based.
Yeah.
That's it.
So, and as you've covered in this, in what you've just said now, there is so much to it when we look at veganism, more than the actual food for consumption. It is really more about a lifestyle and an approach. So, some of you in your conversations actually covered what I wanted to ask next about, why you choose to be vegan. I've heard you mention the environment. I've heard you mention animals quite a lot, and from the documentaries that you have, Shaun and Parusha also quoted. So, we get an idea of why people choose this particular lifestyle, and oftentimes the conversion to it didn't necessarily come from childhood. It came later in life when you were able to make these conversations, these connections, and take on that decision for yourself. So I want to ask you about your families or your very inner circles, your personal circles. Are there many that follow the same diet? And Bathandwa, I'd love to start with you. Does this diet make you a nightmare dinner guest?
Yes, it does. I think as soon as somebody hears vegan, I think people are more adjusted to vegetarianism. So when they hear the word vegan, it's just like, oh my word, are we just going to give her like lettuce and carrots and then that's going to be enough? Or, but I have a son, right? And like I said, when I first started being vegetarian, I was very woke and I was just very angry. And I wanted everybody to be vegan the way I'm vegan. And I was just so headstrong in that. And when my son was about like 2 years, because I travel in between towns and home, my parents were like, oh yeah, he had meat and he really, really enjoyed it. And my world was just like, what happened? But I think over the years, the more I grow, the more I really realize that it's when you feel strongly about something, you should find a way to voice it out that doesn't seem like you are trying to now control people into believing in what you believe in. And at home, nobody is vegetarian or vegan. Everybody loves meat. We are Black people and we eat meat. So what I just do is when I'm home over the
I think we've just lost your microphone. Maybe it's
having pap and meat. and maybe one veg. So over the years, it's become like, oh, okay, mom, listen, there's this salad. Maybe we could have beetroot. Maybe we could have this and this and this. And my dad, when he gets the gout, he just looks at me and I'm like, yeah, you're probably going to be vegetarian or vegan tomorrow. But in terms of friends, it's even worse at like brides. Like sometimes you just get there at a bride and you're like, okay, I know I'm going to be asked like several questions as to why I'm vegan. Are you black? Really? You don't eat meat? So it becomes a nightmare when I go visit people and at restaurants as well. I mean, like, you'll find some restaurants cater, maybe they have like 2 or 3 options that are vegan, but most of the time it's just like a nightmare because you can't even have a coffee because you're like, do you have almond or soy milk, or and everybody's just like, oh gosh, these damn hippies.
Yeah.
So it's bothersome for me in restaurants and like in social interactions. So I have to make sure that I eat enough when I'm home, or if they're preparing a bride, then at least I bring something and I put it there before they bring on the meat. But sometimes people are actually really open and they ask questions because they want to know, as opposed to asking questions because they want to make fun of you. And I think also vegans have this thing where they are very holier than thou. So a lot of people, when you say you're vegan, they're like expecting you to preach and expecting you to now guilt trip them and all that stuff. So I stay careful and I stay away from that. But it's inconvenient in social gatherings where there aren't a lot of vegans.
So for those of you who have joined us, I would like you, and perhaps you are not vegan and perhaps you are not familiar with the lifestyle. I hope that some of this conversation that we're having here will also highlight for you that veganism or plant-based living is not necessarily just about the food. There are so many complexities to navigate. And when one comes from a culture, a Black culture, or a culture that people of color belong to, the various, there are other complexities, because for many of us, the consumption of meat is associated with luxury. It's also associated with having made it and with good times, with with good fortune, with a sign of prominence and wealth. Because I think if I look at my own research, the majority of us, even if we didn't come from homes that that were declared vegetarian, we ate a mainly plant or vegetable diet, and meat was on the weekends. I certainly think about how it was for my parents. They would eat meat once or twice on a weekend. And so when we consider these factors in the culture of eating, you can understand how complex it becomes and why there are these questions as well, more so than it might be for others who don't come from or don't share the similar backgrounds that many of us do. So Parusha, I'd also like you to answer that question, because I know that your family is a family that is multiracial, but you also have a Hindu component in that family. And in general, those who ascribe to Hinduism are very well versed in the vegetarian lifestyle, at least. But how is your closest family taken to your eating habits and your choices?
Yeah, so that's very interesting, because actually I think my family, the Indian part, came to South Africa as vegetarians and then fed their children meat. So actually, by the time I came into the family, there was a meat-eating culture. So even my grandparents, some of them do practice Hinduism, there was no vegetarianism around by the time I arrived. But since they have had about 8 years now to digest the fact that I'm vegetarian, as you say, the whole thing around wealth and making it, and it's seen as a sign of you're wealthy and you're made it to have meat. So like it's very easy to eat vegetarian for me, and a lot of my family have started to just make more vegetables. No one is going to go vegan, but they'll more likely include more vegetarian food. And then if you're eating Indian food, it's very easy. I mean, I can live on dal and rice and have a salad, or they'll make dal and rice and green beans or beans. It's actually really simple. if they're making Indian food. And, now and then, my people forget, and they might include some dairy in some kind of thing, then I'll just be like, okay. And so I also sort of weigh up the thing. It's like, so my grandmother has cooked this with love and kindness and thinks that she's doing a good thing, like, but there's just a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I never have like, but even now I've started to think about it. Like, would it make a big difference if I have mutton curry 3 times a year? It's like a heritage food, like from my childhood. Like, can I overcome, like, can I have this fish curry once or twice a year, but be, majority, 90% of the year, plant-based? So like, I started to think about it. Also, like, you can't tell people of color or marginalized people, like, you need to be vegetarian. Like, that's why I left a lot of the white vegan groups when I first arrived in South Africa. I joined them all. And there were people talking about, but my domestic worker, she wants milk. And then they're like, she should buy her own milk. Like, don't give her money for that. And I was just like, Jesus Christ, these people were like oppressing people, not looking at like all the different layers. So I kind of just think like, you have to think if you're doing the ethical thing, like, you can't just be like very much single focus with it, and look at all the different factors. And also, it's like what I'm putting on my skin. Cruelty free doesn't go, it's not harming people. It's like we have these labels, so it's kind of like you need to look. Like, I have coffee and chocolate, but I look for ethical brands and ones where they work, because otherwise coffee and chocolate is vegan, but it's still working with people that are supporting child labor, or oppressed. There's a lot of oppressive farming practices with food that it doesn't contain animal products. So yeah, but in terms of my family and friends, they've become more chilled about it. Yeah, it's still like, if I went to a braai in South Africa, it's hard, but it's people will still think potatoes and mayonnaise, that's your vibe. Or I'll get a fried sausage or whatever. But if I have friends and family outside of South Africa, it can be that I've been to a braai where everyone was vegetarian. There was one meat eater. So, but yeah, all in all, I'd say most of them have had about almost a decade now to get used to it.
There's some very interesting issues that you raise, and I would like to invite the people who have joined us in this chat to please engage in the chat box. If you have any particular thoughts or feelings, questions, do that, and hopefully we'll get some time to at least address 1 or 2 of them, if not all. So please engage with us on the chat box there. These are very interesting issues, because when one speaks about an ethical stance, one needs to interrogate a lot of things, from farming practice to labor practice. And the example that you made about, my domestic worker drinks milk, one can also ask, how is this domestic worker treated? Let's take the concept inward as well. And can we speak about fair wages? Can we speak about, fair and just treatment? I think these are very important issues, and it makes it complicated, because we can't enjoy the lens from a singular view. One has to do it from a multi-focus and be questioning the entire time. And we come back to that word that we use so often in these discussions about intersectionality, and what does that actually really mean? So I want us to move on now to some misconceptions and some myths, particularly by people of color, regarding veganism. Now, I know, Bathandwa, you addressed some of that, and you have spoken to me previously about this as well. So I'm going to reference Elisha Madzivadondo, who's got the Sunshine Food Company in Bantry Bay, I think it is, in Cape Town. And he's famous for making those burgers and other meals that are made from a mainly sprouted, the ingredients are mainly sprouts. So he had mentioned to me previously that Black folks think veganism is for skinny white people who practice yoga. And his friends also feel that they may go hungry if they visit vegan for lunch. So my question is, why do you think veganism isn't popular among South African Black communities? Or, since I first posed this question to some of you in the last year, has this changed? So I think we may have lost Shaun. I'm just trying to
Again,
see.
would you mind repeating what you were
Are you back here, Shaun? Because I saw you leaving.
I'm back again, sorry.
No worries. Well, welcome back. This is the nature of Zoom. We just dip in and out. So, Shaun, I would like you. So you've heard that question. You were present for it.
No, I
Right?
wasn't, unfortunately. Would you mind repeating that again?
Yeah. Okay. No worries. Okay. So we're speaking about misconceptions by people of color regarding veganism, and I mentioned that Bathandwa had addressed some of that. But and I also referenced Elisha, who runs the Sunshine Food Company in Cape Town, and where he mentioned to me that Black folks think veganism, in his experience, right, is for skinny white people who practice yoga, and his friends also feel they may go hungry if they visited vegan for lunch. So why do you think veganism isn't popular amongst Black communities in South Africa? We can extend that to POC. Shaun? Hi, Shaun. Did you hear that question? I can't, I think you need, right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, cool. Your question. So I was saying that I think there's a lot of stereotypes and a lot of stigma attached to veganism, and those stereotypes are some of the things that perhaps Elisha has mentioned. That being maybe only for skinny white people who practice yoga. And yes, of course, there are those types of things that, like people who are vegan, there are many people who are vegan who practice those things. But I don't think there's a focus on kind of the other things around veganism just for people who practice yoga, but there's also people who enjoy other types of things. Oh, it says my internet connection is on. So can you hear me, Ishay?
I can hear you. I'm a little concerned that you may bounce out of this, but please continue. If there's a problem, then I'm going to put the question over to Nicola, but please continue.
Okay. And I think there's also a lot of how can I put this? We need to kind of have an intersectional approach when it comes to veganism, because within the South African context, there's a lot of social injustices that are happening because of apartheid. And I think we need to address those issues as well, or rather consider those issues as well when it comes to advocating for veganism, because it is an ethical stance where the focus is on trying to in the injustice of all sentient beings. But I think we also need to focus about the injustice that's happening with our people. And yeah, I think that's perhaps the reason why there isn't there's this stigma around veganism, perhaps only being for white people, because of that privilege, because of that privilege, people of a particular color can only perhaps focused on trying to put food on the table. There are many people of color who, are in a particular financial bracket who can only focus on trying to work from day to day to put food on the table, and perhaps people of a certain privilege are able to think of what can we then do to make our food better, or are there other things that we can start thinking about in order to address other types of injustices, whereas people of color are trying to focus more on working day to day and trying to, like I said, put food on the table.
So when you say that, I know, which is one of the things that have come up in previous conversations I've had with many people and conversations I've observed, is that there's a cost, that there's the idea of veganism being quite costly. Nicola, I would like you to tackle this, to start with this, please.
The question is, why do people think veganism?
There's this misconception or this idea that veganism is expensive, first of all. And from the context of people of color who generally we've spoken previously and said that for many of us, meat is an aspiration. Meat is a sign of of success and wealth and progress. If you look at our celebrations and how we do it, So this idea of also of veganism being expensive, speak us through that. Talk us through that, should I say.
I think the reason why people think veganism is expensive is because it's associated to a certain demographic, which is white people. I say that veganism actually originated in Africa, and a lot of Africans get upset with me because they take meat as such a thing as pride. But then all of these nasty meat eating practices that we have, we learned through colonialism. It's not that people of color eat meat, but then we respected meat a little bit more until colonization, where when I say nasty meat eating practices, I mean, we kept cows just a little bit, but then now we got taught how to have factories of cows and artificial insemination. That's not a part of our culture. So a lot of Africans don't understand, well, I feel that we are actually plant-based, and it's not as expensive as it is, as people think it actually is, because we have a lot of options. It's just that Black-owned businesses are not being given a chance to expose their brands, and the market is saturated. So veganism is not expensive in general. It's the products that are being presented. And it's not that Black people don't have worthy products or products that are as good of a quality. It's just that the people who are making these decisions and conversations about what goes on the shelves or what's trending or what they're going to put their advertising money to are people who are not of color. So we don't have a voice. So I think that's the main problem.
Yeah, thank you for that. So, when at the start of this conversation, I had mentioned the link to capitalism and the link to white supremacy, and it's so evident that this comes all across. It comes across and permeates so many levels of these conversations that we have about food, even when we choose for the conversation not to necessarily be overtly political, or we're not necessarily getting into agriculture and policy. But if you just speak to a business owner trying to sell a certain product, I mean, I'm going to mention it here, and when we can circle back if we have some time, to products like the lab-based meats, like the Impossible Burger, the Impossible that kind of thing, that are in many ways more expensive than actually eating good or what they call ethical meat. And I think that also prices itself in a completely different category, doesn't it? I'm not sure if any of you have tried it and you give me a comment there, but I think that also leads on a little bit to the next question I have. But has anyone tried I know many of you would be familiar with the soya products and the lentil-based products, but has anyone tried the Impossible Burger and Impossible kind of sausages and other things?
Mm.
Okay.
Yes.
So tell us what you think.
Okay, who wants to go first?
Well, I can see you, Parusha, so
Okay.
why don't you?
Okay, cool. Well, basically, I was very excited by the Impossible Burger. I think in the beginning, when you're also transitioning from eating meat, it's actually great to have things that are familiar. I think it's, the goal isn't necessarily to always live on substitutes, but there are certain things like attachments to, I don't know, your memories and through nostalgia of having the flavor, the texture, etc. So the Impossible Burger I tried in the States, and the Beyond Burger I also tried there, but the Beyond Burger is available here, like in quite a few places, and it's imported, so it's very expensive, definitely. But yeah, I think that they're great, and a lot of my family is open to having food that is vegan if there's no like loss of the flavor that they're used to. Like I think that's great.
Okay, and Bathandwa, would you like to weigh in here?
I remember when I first started being vegetarian, I used to buy a lot of like the soy products and the meat substitutes, and not necessarily because I still wanted to eat meat, but I mean, like, I think I was probably 16 at the time. So this was like a lot of years where I was used to having a certain kind of meal with a certain texture and a certain like feel and whatnot. So I have no like beef, haha, funny. I have no problem with that. I just think that it is quite expensive. And if you're going to have all those products every day, obviously you will have a problem when it comes to money. But I think I only have like a veggie burger here and there when I'm at a restaurant and stuff like that. But yeah, it's quite a lot on the budget. But I found there's something called Stella McCartney something, and they're quite affordable and they're quite dope too. There was like this one with the red onion flavor that I enjoyed. That's dope. But I think that people, it's difficult to let go of a certain taste that you've been like accustomed to for quite a long time. So it's great. I'd say if you want to still live with that, then yeah, cool. Where's the problem? There's no problem.
So I haven't tried those products, but I believe it could be her mother's, Linda McCartney's.
Yeah.
So on that note of substitutes, I wanted to bring up something from a conversation I had with a vegan chef in Berlin a number of years ago, and he'd obviously had plenty of years in the bag doing this. And at that stage, when he first opened his restaurant called Mio Mato, it was the first vegan restaurant serving like fine dining in Berlin. It obviously since closed. So I'm going to just tell you what he had said to me, which I found was very interesting. And his name is Bjorn Moshinsky. He said most vegans were meat eaters. He says, when I ask why so many vegan and vegetarian products are made to emulate meat, like sausages, nuggets, fillets, it's not that we don't miss the taste, the texture, the flavor, he explains. Many of us do. The decision is based on a broader one. It's about the environment and animal rights and the human impact on our consumption has on it. And I found, in my personal experience, I found quite a difference in the attitude and the public opinion of vegans, or those ascribing to a vegan lifestyle, who are, choose to be a little more flexible, and those who choose, I would say, to be a little more militant about it, a sort of, taking a very strong stance about anything to do with the consumption of meat or craving it and that kind of thing. But I just thought that also tied in with what you had said, Parusha, about texture and smell and that kind of thing. I don't know if anyone wants to weigh in here about if you came from a meat eating background, if there's anything in particular about that you actually miss in terms of taste. Anyone willing to go?
I could I mean, I definitely like once a year, for example, it was a trifle at Christmas. Like I was okay with giving up all the meat, and like the Christmas experience for me would just be this massive like mix of everything. Like we have like British Indian vibe with like masala on some roasts, and it's like meat, like biryani and like pies and vadas and samosas, and then trifle was the hit at the end that I would save myself for as a child, and I have bowls of this ice cream with the cream and layers of jelly and everything. And then first I was like, I am not going to do this. It's, cow rape, and it's horrible. And I was like, I'm staying away from that. And most of the time I also keep all the reasons in my head. And then I was like, okay, are you going to is it going to harm anyone if you do this once a year? So I did change my mind about it, because I think the main thing for me is that I won't, eat meat, but we can create like a meaty dish, like from my childhood using substitutes. But then if it's there, I'm there. And I was trying to think, creating my own vegan desserts have a nostalgic element to them, but it's not the same thing made by my aunt. And I think that for me, we don't have enough of this South African generated knowledge around the food industry. And it's like, well, can you not get the benefits if you do it most of the year, and then a few occasional events that, like in the way that our ancestors did it, ceremonially, there would be one big, soup or stew or curry shared amongst the whole family that contained a small amount of I mean, it contains some meat or animal product. And going back to that, as opposed to going, like, you know, I was vegan 100%, and then I was extreme. And then, you know, it's like, so now I sort of, I don't consume meat, but I sometimes will just go, okay, like have something with the dairy in it.
Yeah.
And
so there's an element of nostalgia that comes up. I know you brought this up, and certainly I can pick it up from what you're saying, that a lot of the eating we do and the enjoyment that we attach to food, you know, is attached to this nostalgia, and particularly to people, as you said, you know, grandmother, maybe there's a raita, you know, or the Mars salad that's going with the biryani, and that you associate with your grandmother, you know, and your aunt that you mentioned as well. So, you know, I think we've covered some of this, but, you know, Angela Davis, for her, she says that, you know, veganism is an act against the oppression of all sentient beings. And, you know, Bathandwa, I wonder if you could come in here and tell us a little bit about, are there any other Black leaders or public figures who practice veganism that you admire?
Okay, I would like to add on the previous question about, like, what do I miss about eating meat? I miss just being around people and having your plate to yourself without being asked like 1,000 questions. Because as soon as you're just like sitting, everybody's like, so where are you getting your protein from? What about this? What about that? What about that? Like, suddenly everybody's just like a nutritional list. And I miss having that peace of mind where I can just eat whatever I'm eating, no questions, nothing. And I also, like Presh just pressed on, I mean, when we're all sitting as a family and everybody's bringing in like different meals, everybody's bringing like desserts, and you're bringing this, and it's like, I wish I could join, not necessarily because I want to taste that, but it's just like, we're all family, we're all one, and here I am now who's just going to have something separate from everybody. So I miss feeling like we are one, I suppose, when it comes to eating meat. With the question that you're asking now, I don't know if you know Chef Aki. She's from America, and she does a lot of work. She also does a lot of charity drives as well. What I love about her approach is that she's not preachy, and she's not like trying to attack everybody for having something different from hers. What she does is that she introduces like the American Black dishes, but from a vegan way. So it's like, yes, you're Black, but that does not mean that you cannot eat a vegan diet. And I think for me, the problem that I want to also show people is that I think somebody touched on it earlier, is that us as Black people, we actually used to not really eat meat, maybe here once or there. So it's not something that's completely foreign to us. And what she does is that she introduces it in a way that is like very practical, in a way that people can understand it, and it's not like intimidating. Because I want to admit that when I first heard of what veganism was, I was really intimidated, because you go on Instagram and you go on the internet and then you see chia seeds and you see all of these ingredients that you have no idea where you're going to get them. And I love tofu, but I haven't had tofu in the past year. So, I mean, a lot of these recipes and a lot of the food bloggers, they try to introduce veganism in a different way that not everybody can grasp or relate to. So what I enjoy is that her food is very relatable. It's something that you can get in the stores. It's ingredients that you have in your pantry. So it's not like an inconvenience, and it's not like you're going to go out of your way to create a certain dish. But it's just like her approach is just very friendly, and that's what I enjoy about her.
And speaking of an approach that is very friendly, and I would also say very vibrant, I want to mention the photographs of food that you post on Instagram and on your Facebook page. I mean, if you look at it, the ingredients are often simple, but they're presented in the most lavish picnic style. And it often, I know my friend, your friend, Yolisa, often wish that we were there picnicking with you. So the presentation is absolutely delightful. And I was going to ask everyone to give their contact details on the end, but on this note, while we're speaking about it, how can people check out your your beautiful food styling and recipes. Who are you on Instagram again?
Thank you so much. It's so crazy. I think everybody actually jokes on my Instagram, on my Facebook, is when I say I did the simple dish and they're like, okay, yeah, sure, simple. But it's actually basic ingredients. It's just that I love to play around with backgrounds and textures and whatnot. So that's what I try to do. I try to do simple, something that you can find, but you have to be a foodie because it's like something new. That's the thing with me with food. It's like I want to experience something different. I don't want to have the same thing repeatedly over and over. But you can find me on Instagram as The Earthy Cook. My blog also, it's theearthycook.com. Please also follow Women Wellness on Instagram and Arise Magazine on Instagram as well.
Thank you. So I'd like to return to this question briefly about the idea that, you know, the act of supporting veganism is one that is actually against the oppression of all living beings. And Kola, Shaun, I'd like you to weigh in here as well. But Kola, I know that you work with a set of, we all know you work with a set of rangers, women rangers in Zim, if I'm correct. Would you like to tell us a little bit, please, about this connection between the food that you are growing and feeding them, which is vegan, and the work that they are doing in protecting these animals?
Well, basically, it's the International Anti-Poaching Foundation, and they're the world's only female armed vegan rangers. And we serve about 1,500 meals every day, and my job is I'm the executive chef, and I had a team of about 8 female chefs who I trained from rural Zimbabwe on vegan plant-based eating. And yeah, that's what we do.
It's incredible. But do you feel that there's a resonance between the work that the anti-poaching unit is doing in terms of saving and protecting the life of animals and the kind of food that they are consuming? That's sort of the stance that they are taking there.
Well, not to sound too political or anything, yeah, there is. And there's a reason why they're vegan. Their stance, one of the main reasons is that they don't believe in protecting the wild animals and then going and eating animals, even if they're not wild. So that's the connection. That's one of the main connections.
Okay, that's an interesting correlation. Shaun, would you like to weigh in here as well?
So, in terms of the connection that veganism has to, is your question regarding veganism and connecting it to social injustice, or?
Well, yes, and also the protection of lives in general. I'm going to ask you just to speak up a little bit, if that's okay. I know that we are running out of time, but please continue. So I can't actually hear you, Shaun. Can you hear Shaun?
How about now?
Now, yes. Yeah. Well, the sound, yeah.
A little bit muffled, but can you hear me properly now?
Yes.
Okay. So I was saying it's interesting with regards to what Kola was saying, as Damien Mander, the person who she works with, the founder of the Anti-Animal Poaching Foundation. I hosted a talk that revolved around the foundation and the work that they do in Zimbabwe with regards to anti-poaching, but also hearing the stories from the rangers that Kola and Damien work with, and how and the skills that they have been provided with through the foundation and working for the foundation has given them the confidence to stand up and stand as proud women. I remember one of the rangers that was speaking at the talk was talking about how she was living in a situation where her partner was very abusive, and just learning all of the things through the foundation has helped her kind of leave that relationship, and she's grown to study further, get her degree or diploma, and just take herself out of that vulnerable position and kind of give strength back to her and take the strength back from being in that vulnerable situation. So I
Thank you.
definitely do think there's a connection.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that we have a lot of other things that I would like to ask you, and I'm very curious about so many aspects of, how you live the plant-based lifestyle. I'm going to just quickly get onto the chat because there were 2 comments here, and you can see them as well. So one was from Taryn, who said, perhaps the perception of veganism being for skinny white people who practice yoga stems from the fact that people of color typically tend to class things viewed as expensive or frivolous as white people things. I suppose that's something to consider. And then Candace has said, would you say the education in speciesism, education from colonialism, that we are separate from animals and we identify them differently based on what we use them for, has a correlation with the marginalization of human beings? Because the first thing we learn at school is identifying animals as separate to us. So again, would anyone like to comment on that?
Can I please hear question 1 again?
Okay, can you see it in the chat box by any chance? The first one was about the perception of veganism, skinny white people who practice yoga. Maybe it stems from the fact that POC typically tend to class things viewed as expensive or frivolous as white people things.
Okay, I think with that, what I've noticed is that actually a lot of Black people live on a plant-based meal. That's what I've seen. It's just that meat is expensive to them. Like, it's like, oh my gosh, you got like 2 kilos of meat. That's like a lot. And I think most people turn a blind eye to that because a lot of Black people feel like you have to be a vegan, like in ways that I mentioned, like all of these super expensive products, and you have to be like the strict vegan and you have to eat this way, live this way, and all of that. And all of these rules that we try and put onto people without understanding how they live on a daily basis, how their lives are, if they can manage being as strict as most vegans are. So I think with that question, Black people are vegan. It's just that it's mostly taken by white people because they are more privileged and they have more powers and positions to create something like that, and it becomes like super elite. And that's why most Black people feel like they cannot join in because it just looks like it does not represent us.
Yeah, and it also comes to something I remember Nicola was mentioning, and it's come across in many conversations we've had on these panels. The idea that, we are here doing things, but you may not know about it. And you may not know about it because the access becomes really difficult in terms of, marketing, making it profitable, distribution, all of those things that require funds and funding and backups. In a conversation that we had a little earlier on indigenous edible plants, the conversation came up the point came up quite strongly about colonialism and how locally the diet was very, very attuned to what was growing, to seasonal and to edible indigenous ingredients. But there's been a great loss in that for all of these reasons, and a lot of them are tied to colonialism, so much so that our people are familiar with foods of their ancestors, and the records are so poor that, in trying to rewrite them, it's a complete re-education that one has to embark on. And that is luckily happening, but it is also stunted for many reasons. Again, funding. Through whose lens are we looking at this? Suddenly things become political because, there's a competition for access to funds to carry on these projects. So I know we have come to time. And if there's anybody who's participating who would like to ask a question or to join us in that way, we'd like to invite you to do that now. And if not, I'm going to ask everybody just to give us their details quickly. From my side, Ishay Govender on behalf of SAPOC at the table. You can find us www.sapoctable.com. We're also on Instagram. So Parusha, I see you've given your details there on the chat, but maybe you want to start just letting people know how they can contact you. You're Mute.
Sorry. So if you head to parusha.com, it's got all the links to my social media on Instagram, and there are 2 accounts, Parusha Naidoo, and I've got a new account where I'm doing food interviews, camphor and coconut.
Lovely.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Was it me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Follow me on Instagram, the Earthy Cook. Also on my blog, theearthycook.com. Don't follow me on Facebook. I'm a bit ratchet on Facebook. I'm a bit wild. Follow me on the other one. I'm kidding. Follow me on Facebook, Bathandwa and Nkambul. And follow Women Wellness as well, Women Wellness Institute.
Great. Nicola?
Thank you so much for having me. And it's African Vegan on a Budget.
Thank you so much.
Facebook, everything.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for making time to join us. Shaun?
I also want to say thank you, Ishay, for hosting this conversation, and I'd love to continue these conversations into the future. You can find me on Instagram, Shaun the Vegan, and you can also follow the Vegan Goods Market page at Vegan Goods Market.
Thank you everyone for a really interesting conversation, for the work that you're doing, and for supporting each other, coming together as a community. I look forward to speaking to all of you at any time. And thank you all for listening. This video will be up on YouTube, the SAPOC at the Table channel. Thanks and bye.
Thank you. Bye.